And we're live. It is Saturday, November 14th, 2020, 5 o'clock p.m. I have just returned from the Million MAGA March, where I was showing my enthusiasm for the coup along with a million, and by a million I mean a few thousand, of my fellow patriots. No, I wasn't there. I was sitting at home listening to podcasts and working on a little thing that I've been writing, and basically having a lazy day. Kate, how about you? What have you been up to today?
I have had a crazy day. John has a group of really close friends that he was on the cross-country ski team with in college, and they've all moved back to New England in the last year, and it's his 40th birthday on Tuesday, and so I invited them to stay in like off-season hotel rooms out here basically, and come for the weekend. So we're doing like, and it kind of coincided with like basically John turning to me and being like, we're going into full hibernation mode and not seeing anyone for like a long time, looking at these numbers. And I was like, after this weekend, like, so literally I spent $500 on like an outdoor fire pit so everyone could be in 45-degree weather on the deck, like a propane fire pit, and eat beef stew and hang out.
Excellent.
And yeah, and so that, and then play games, and it's working quite well. And they all went, they're all like cross-country runners. They all went for like a run to get a 6-mile run together. And so it's like a perfect, ended up being a really nice, like you couldn't do it with everyone, but this particular group, it ended up being a really nice, it's been a really nice couple of hours, and they're leaving tomorrow morning. So it's very brief, but it's like been kind of crazy. And like the only socialization I've had in like 3 or 4 months outside my parents. So
right, and a baby who showed up,
but that was like July.
Yeah,
and that was
a while
it.
ago.
So that was a long time ago.
So no babies have shown up here.
No babies have shown up.
An excellent former lawfare cub is showing up after, in lieu of fun, for a socially distanced patio drink, and I'm very excited to see him.
Oh, see, I agree that it's time to hunker down. I'm starting to wonder, so I was talking, because it was funny, we had John Barrett on yesterday, and I was kind of, before the show and after, we kind of exchanged text messages, because we teach at the same place, obviously, and I have to go back to New York in January, because I have to teach in person, and I think that like, and he was saying that he thinks that with the numbers going in the direction that they're going and the volume that they're going, that there's going to be no way that schools are opening again. And I think it's too early to tell, but I don't know. I have no idea. So.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, I'm supposed to do my Harvard class at HLS in the spring,
but
I don't
already remote.
It's already remote,
Yeah.
It's like it's just going to be another Zoom meeting,
yeah,
and it might actually require adjusting in lieu of funds time one day a week. Who knows?
Oh,
well, because we don't have a schedule for it yet.
I think all of my in lieu of fun stuff is, I think I'm good. I think I'm done with teaching property at 3:30. So, but I mean, the hard thing will be if I can get home in time by 5 o'clock to do it, or if I'm gonna have to stay at school and do it from my office or something. But yeah, anyways, whatever. It's like, it's just kind of, the numbers are insane. Like I was looking at these graphs and I'm like, these are
150,000 people yesterday.
It's twice the numbers that they were at like when we thought that this was really bad in the spring, and I do not understand, like, am I wrong in thinking, and I'm like curious if our audience has any kind of insight into this. But Ben, do they know why they're climbing so much besides just people getting lax?
No, of course they know. So first of all,
Because I've
everyone.
asked like 6 people and like
No, no,
read all the
no.
stuff.
I think it's very clear. There was always a expectation that there would be a spike in the fall when people spent more time indoors.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of individuals are ignoring guidance, and a lot of states and jurisdictions are not being as aggressive as they were 4 or 5 months ago. And of course, there is still no national policy. So, and by the way, the same thing's happening in Europe. The baseline is very high, and we're not doing aggressive interventions. It's actually really simple, and we shouldn't be scratching our heads about it.
Yeah. What you just said is exactly what I assumed. But I guess like I don't know. I guess that's not like one particular event or one particular thing. It's just kind of like it's just all of the factors that we knew that would happen in the fall, but a little bit accentuated, like worse than we
Yeah,
thought.
it's not a so people who are saying my volumes levels are low. Is it better now?
Yeah, that's
Um,
better. I
it's not like it's a big mystery here. It's multi-causal. It doesn't have a single cause. It's not a, but it's not it's not a big mystery. If you wanted to avoid this, the time to do it was 6 weeks ago. That's what people were saying 6 weeks ago. Um, and, you know, there are places in the country that have done better than other places in the country. By the way, I'm under one of them. I'm in one of them. I mean, DC it's not great, but we're talking about 80, 90 new cases a day. And that's, by the way, better than both Maryland and Virginia on a per capita basis. So, governance does matter. Um,
Yeah. I think
by the
that
way,
yeah.
we're not allowed to have fun anymore.
Oh shit, we never did the thing. Oh well,
But
this was our 8 minute monologue.
but in lieu of fun, so I actually have I forgot actually what the thing that I was going to do a little thing about, because it showed up in the chat. Somebody asked. Oh yes, I remember. So somebody put in the chat that my pancake tweet today was epic, and I just want to say,
pancake tweet?
So for those of you who don't know, the K-pop kids who brought you screwing up Trump's rally struck again today, by or the last couple of days, by taking over the Million MAGA March hashtags with pictures of pancakes. Now, why pancakes? I don't know, but it's kind of awesome. And lots of people were tweeting pancake memes, pancake gifs, pancake, all kinds of everything. So this morning, the estimable Dr. Wittes, which is to say Tammy, retweeted a whole bunch of pancake images and then commented to me that all of this was great, but it was making her hungry for pancakes. So Tammy went to make some pancakes, and she took some raspberries from the cabin in the woods that we'd picked and made raspberry pancakes, and it was great. And I took a picture of it and tweeted the picture, with all the relevant hashtags, all of which would have been the amusing end of the matter, except that
did he get retweeted by someone great or something?
No. It's way better than that. Except that a very cool company in that makes placemats, beautiful, really beautiful textured placemats, noticed that we had on our table their placemats. And they tweeted, let me find their tweet. Love those placemats, Mr. Wittes. P.S. We also love rational security. And then they, and so I hereby endorse Chillowich placemats, whose slogan on Twitter is bringing depth to surfaces, original textiles for tabletops, floors, and much more, design-led and family-owned. And they are, of course, made in the USA. So, and I will also say about Chillowich placemats that they have excellent taste in podcasts. So I will tweet this at them. They clearly, Christopher Argyris, have not discovered In Lieu of Fun yet, but they will. And I
love little things like that the internet gives us. I really love them. They're so great.
They actually, in all seriousness, they are beautiful, beautiful woven placemats, and we love them. And so just remember, when you buy Chillowich placemats, you are supporting people who listen to rational security and have a sense of humor. Should we plan the show?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So Monday is already taken care of. Although
wait, what is it?
Natalie Jackson is coming back to discuss polling error.
Oh, yay!
And she quite rightly complained on Twitter that everybody who's being interviewed about polling error was male, and that there are some women who have some thoughts about polling error in the 2020 election too. So I told her she was right, and she should come back on the show and talk about it. Alice Watson, I have invited Chuck Rosenberg on the podcast, and Chuck and I are good friends, but he declined on the basis that he was not a good surrogate for fun. And I think that is completely wrong, but I have to respect his I can ask him again, but he's but he didn't seem to be all that interested in coming on. As to bringing back Jordan Ellenberg, that is also a great idea. And Jordan is one of my oldest friends in the world. I have literally known Jordan since he was born, because his parents are mathematical statisticians and friends of my parents.
That's so great.
Jonas Ellenberg and my mother went to graduate school together.
Yeah, that would be. I would love to have him again.
Yeah, we can bring Jordan back. So on Monday we have.
Hold on, I'm going to start writing these down so I don't forget them.
On Monday we have Natalie Jackson, with whom we will have a polling error discussion. Mm-hmm. And then at crowd request, I have invited Sandro Nivola, known publicly as Alessandro Nivola.
Oh, yeah.
And he has agreed, and we are emailing about which day to do. So he'll choose one of those days. So we have two of the days this week covered.
I did mention to you Matt Iglesias. I texted Matt because he left Vox kind of fascinatingly. If anyone has been following kind of some of the controversy, I don't remember. Someone probably, hopefully in the chat, can remind me of what the context was for what he had a falling out with Vox. Do you remember? Oh, it was about the letter.
The letter.
That's
from
right.
the trans employee of Vox. I would love to have.
No, he was one of the signatories in Yasha's
letter. He was
Yeah.
one of the signatories in on Yasha's on I think it was Thomas Chatterton Williams organized the letter actually, but he was one of the signatories on the Harper's letter, and a trans employee of Vox wrote publicly or said publicly that it made her feel unsafe. And that was the but I don't know whether he did not resign over that, because that was weeks or months ago. So yeah, I am now that I know that Matt Iglesias doesn't hate my guts, I'm all for having him on the show anytime. To those who are urging a callback of Janet Wittes, she cannot do it. We have asked, and I am not at liberty to discuss the reason that she can't do it. But you know, well, let's just say this. You know, she is a statistician actively involved in design and analysis of clinical trials, and so she doesn't feel it would be proper for her to be on right now.
Yeah, and I asked Andy.
By the way, being turned down for a booking by your mom, I just want to say, you know, like you haven't really experienced rejection until you've like texted your mom and say, hey, can you come on the show? And your mom says, I am not available at this time.
I feel like there's so many jokes there. If like we ever ask like Barack Obama to be on, and like Barack Obama says no, it's like the two people that like have like said no to a Lieu of Fun. It's like Obama, Janet.
So I'll tell you a funny story about that. In my brief period of celebrity, after the Comey firing, when I went public with, you know, the blue drape stories and all of that, I was, you know, the subject of interview requests from everywhere for about 2 weeks. And one of them was from a...
Would you have said yes to In Lieu of Fun at that point?
Probably not. I mean, like, I don't think I could have conceptualized In Lieu of Fun at that point. But I've never had anything like it. It was a sort of, you know, everybody who basically wanted to have talk to Jim Comey would... you know, came and approached me instead. And
the poor man's version of Jim
I
Comey.
was like, yeah, I was like a cutaway Jim Comey. And so...
that should be your Halloween costume next year.
So I'm not going to name this person just because I don't see any reason to be a total asshole, just a partial asshole. But there was this one daytime television host who was very eager to have me on. And this person... went through about 100 intermediaries, like people we both knew. And, you know, I was getting references. And this is somebody who until this time, honestly, I had never heard of. Although he, she, or it is in fact very famous. It's just that I'm a pop culture illiterate. And so I finally, the PR representative of my section at Brookings wanders into my office and says, so Ben, I've heard again from so-and-so, and she's really upset with you. And she said to me, he's like harder to book than fucking Madonna. And that kind of sat kind of well with me. I felt like I had a kind of prima donna moment.
You're saying the right things.
Prima Madonna moment. And so, yeah, so I was, and this person and I have never had occasion to speak since, but I know that I have pissed her off in a major way, and that made me happy. Okay. Oh, so the Susan Landau idea is a very good one, and let me shoot Susan a note right now to make it happen, because this has come up before, and as many things that fly by the what's it called, the chat, I make a point of I make a note to myself to not forget, and then I forget. Do you want to come on in lieu of fun this week? Question mark. All right, Susan Landau is now officially invited. Catherine Maddox, John McWhorter. I just listened to an incredible lecture by him on Lexicon Valley that I thought was really terrific, and I have not successfully made contact with him, but I am working on it. I think he is super interesting and thoughtful, and I tweeted very enthusiastically about the Lexicon Valley episode. I also, by the way, just for those of you who don't listen to Lexicon Valley, I don't say this very often, but that man has incredibly interesting and diverse tastes in music. And he
in a good way?
Oh yeah, no, he knows a shitload about all kinds of, like, he knows like, he did a little riff that I thought was really interesting about the relationship between early Gershwin and period Black English, which I thought was really eye-opening and involved a whole lot of stuff I didn't know about early Gershwin, which is something that a subject I thought I knew a lot about. I am all for having John McWhorter on, and will continue to badger him on Twitter until he capitulates. As to the David French idea, David was booked, and we are working on it. He had a bit of an emergency and couldn't do Thursday when he was supposed to be on, but we will reschedule him.
I was thinking that it would be super interesting, and tell me if you agree with this, but I thought it would be fun to have Josh Marshall back, because I've been having conversations, and and it would be interesting, maybe we could have Matt and Josh on together even, because I think there's an interesting conversation that's twofold that's happening in new media right now. One, where you have like this surge of Substack, right? Of these private individuals kind of like selling their brand and like marketing their newsletters and everything else, and like all of these people quitting like new media to go do that. I guess all is a little bit strong, but like a number of people. And so like I think you mentioned in a text, you were like that the market's I wonder when the market will saturate for that type of thing, which is a great question. And then the other thing that I was talking about with someone the other day is kind of the same thing that happened in 2008 with the election of Obama, which was like this kind of maybe momentary panic in media and left media of like, okay, and so now what? Like, what are we going to cover? What's going to drive our numbers if there isn't this fervor over like, if this guy is gone? And of course, I don't think he's actually disappearing in any way. We should be so lucky. But like, I remember talking to Josh about this in 2008. He had literally built a media company in the 8 years of Bush, and how he transitioned it at like when it switched, I think would be super interesting to talk about.
So I'm down for that, especially because I need some advice, like Lawfare grew during this period, and we have to sustain it during the next period. So I'm all for that.
Okay, cool. So that's like a whenever type of thing. So I'll talk to both of them and see if they want to come on together and do something.
Excellent. I also like the idea of the, somebody said in the chat, the Substack revolution.
I do too.
I have to confess, skeptical of the Substack revolution.
I wonder who's going to edit them.
Well, there's an editor problem, and there's also okay, you'll pay for X number of people, right? But X plus 1 is harder than X. Yeah. And X plus, the higher X plus N goes, the more you're like, I'm at saturation, I'm not reading this. And I wonder if they're going to have to do some sort of package deals with like-minded people.
I know. They're going to start bundling in the same way. And like, same way the apps have been having to do that.
Right. And once you do that, it starts to look suspiciously like a magazine, which is like, why not call it Vox, for example?
Well, like you're seeing this, but this is exactly right. Like the de-aggregation of cable packages, so that you bought HBO, you bought NBC, and like you didn't buy anything else. But then if you buy enough, it stops making sense to have de-aggregated, and so you want to be able to put them in the package. And some of the packages are pretty similar, right? Like people have the same apps that they want, and so they want them together. So I completely agree with you. But it seems healthy to me, but maybe I'm like, it feels like a good thing for media.
Look, I am all for all experiments in people figuring out how to monetize their intellectual capital, because this situation is not sustainable. And the more dependent on the marginal advertising dollar we are, the more Facebook and Google control everything, and it's bad. And I think we, like, all of these experiments in charging for X but not for Y, charging for everything, I support them all. Yeah. I'm a little bit, the harder question is whether, as a businessman, and I'm only sort of a businessman because like I run a nonprofit, but it is a nonprofit that we have to sustain, whether I think it's an actually viable model. Look, Lawfare runs on the NPR model. I know that's a viable model, right?
Yep.
Every now and then we ask people for money. And like we grow only as much as they give us. But we don't have to run, like we don't have to do we're not a for-profit operation. And if you're Andrew Sullivan, or if you're Matt Iglesias, right, doing the, like, I got to make a living thing, that's a tricky business. And we've got to figure out how to, make that work. So somebody asked whether I can give a lecture. I try to avoid giving lectures on demonetizing intellectual capital. Mark, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but if you pose that question in a way that I understand, I can give you my thoughts on it.
What was I going to say? Okay. Okay, well, this is like a decent list. It's fewer names than we usually have.
No, but we also, there's a heavy duty set of requests for essepidemiologists.
Do you want to reach out to Andy Slavitt? Because I don't have.
I am happy to reach out to Andy. But he is not an epidemiologist.
No, I know. I just mean like if it scratches the same itch, I guess is like a little bit what I'm thinking.
All right, we will get to work on this stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. So epidemiologists. I'm just gonna like put. The thing is like you in the Jim Comey era, epidemiologists are like.
Yeah, epidemiologists are the new like rule of law people. They're
exactly.
Someone even tweeted recently that.
Oh, you just reminded me, Steve Fladdick. We should have Steve on.
All right, well, but that's easy.
I know, but like
I'll text him.
I have been dying at his takes on Twitter of the shitty filings, the crazy shitty filings of like some of Trump's lawyers. It's embarrassing how bad they are. Larry Lessig, we can definitely do. I will get back in touch with Larry. That's actually overdue for that. I actually was thinking Jonathan Zittrain to come loop back around. Remember we had him on to talk about contact tracing and what has happened to contact tracing. Like, why did that, like, it feels like it's become, it gets used in some instances that are high profile. I don't know. Like, I guess, and now is it just like being abandoned altogether?
I think the numbers are too big for contact tracing right now.
Yeah.
We need to be in mitigation mode. To everybody who's suggesting Ron Klain as a guest, while I do know Ron Klain and I think highly of him, the chances that he's going to be doing media of any kind between now and January 20th is 0.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be appropriate for him to, and therefore I wouldn't ask. All right.
Yeah. Oh man, it's like you want to do some questions?
Yeah, let's bring in. So this is a good time. Upvote your favorite questions, and let's start bringing people in.
Start with James Puckett's question.
Well, I already James Puckett. Where is he?
He's down a ways. It's about I just tweeted a very vague tweet that said about the Mandalorian.
He doesn't seem to be on right now. So
okay.
So I will read you his question. Kate, I just saw your Twitter. What's your thoughts on Mandalorian? I'm a massive In Lieu of Fun and Star Wars fan. LOL. Whoops. And that question just disappeared. But I think you got the gist of it.
I loved the new Mando episode. Okay. So after Alex Petri was on the other day, she closed by saying, "Oh, there's a new season of The Mandalorian that's starting." And I was like, "Oh yeah, The Mandalorian. I meant to watch that. I'm a Star Wars fan. That would be great." And so I came out and I was like, "Hey," this is to John. I was like, "Do you want to watch The Mandalorian?" He's not a huge Star Wars fan. I know this about him and have always known this. And I quite like the series. I think it's wonderful. I'm not like a nut about it or anything, but it's like a go-to feel-good movie to put on like an airplane or something. And so anyways, he was like, I can't watch Star Wars. I can't even deal with it anymore. I was like, I didn't know you felt that strongly about it. And he was like, I don't like how they treat the droids. They treat them like a slave class and they're horrible to them. And I can't, it's just I just don't like how they treat AI. And I was like, I mean, I've done a fair amount of research and I just haven't really thought about it from that perspective. I guess I always had this exceptionalism for Star Wars that I wasn't even, and it has just this take has ruined Star Wars for me. Pretty much totally. I now can't unsee this gross injustice. It's like if you got stuck going back in time and all of a sudden you were in the 20th century and you got transported into 12 years a slave and you were just standing there and you're supposed to act like this was normal. It wasn't the whole point of the thing. And so I kind of feel that. Except it's with I'm like, wow, this is going to be so out of date someday. This is just going to be so out of date. This is not even treating it like it's a statement. And so it's really changed it for me. But even besides that, I kind of think that the dialogue has been kind of corny. The costuming and scenery, and this was also true of some of the newer movies, is just so much less gritty and kind of Western-y. It's too much space. And it's not enough Western. I know that Star Wars is a space Western genre, but it's just not enough everything is just slightly too, all the makeup is slightly too bright and slightly too flawless and slightly not slimy enough and not dingy enough and not grimy enough and dusty enough. And I missed that from the original movies. So anyways, that's kind of my thoughts on The Mandalorian. And then also there's a really weird plot about it. Basically is about this guy who's a religious zealot in this creed. that like doesn't show his face, and that's like, or to ever take off his mask, and that has kind of like weird implications and overtones too. And so it's just like a very strange, there's just like a lot of mixed messaging, and it's all packaged up with a baby Yoda. And I'm just like, okay, I like the baby Yoda. Like, that's fine. Like, and there's some good fight scenes. And like, you know, but anyway, so I like it quite a bit, but it's just like, I'm just kind of like, this is not canon. That's basically was my take.
All right. Daniel Burge, blending in with his chair. Floor is yours, sir.
I'll phrase my question in two different ways. What are the lessons that you think Democrats should take away from their underperformance in Senate or House races? Or put differently, what questions should they be asking?
Ooh, good question. You go, Ben.
I would say, first of all, that it is not clear to me that they did underperform. They underperformed relative to their expectations because they were expecting one electorate to turn out. And in fact, they got exactly the blue wave that they expected, but there was also a red wave that they expected less of. And I think the lesson is they underestimated, by the way, as did most pollsters, the degree to which Trump drives turnout for his base. And so if you increase the size of the electorate relative to expectations by a fair bit, and there were, 70 million Trump voters. It's a lot of Trump voters. That's going to be a rising tide that lifts a lot of Republican votes. And I think we will have a very interesting window on whether those people will turn out for anybody but Donald Trump in the Georgia electorate in January. We will also get another window on that in next year's Virginia and New Jersey, I think, is an off-cycle election as well. But we won't know really what any of them, whether that mobilization is just for Trump until 2 years from now. And by the way, we also won't know whether this coalition that turned out against Trump can stay mobilized over the Senate. We have a little bit more window on that because of 2018. But remember, that was people coming out to vote for Congress in response to Trump. Well, now you have a nice, gentle Joe Biden administration. Does that Democratic constituency stay motivated? So the main lesson from my point of view is we underestimated Trump as a turnout driver for his base. And by the way, all the reputable pollsters, to one degree or another, underestimated Trump as a turnout driver to his base. And I don't know what to make of that because I don't actually know whether that is transferable to Republican turnout in any situation other than the one when Trump is on the ballot. So that's all I got right now for it. But I don't think the Democrats should have done anything different in terms of how they ran their campaign.
I mean, what are we talking? We're not. I mean, like, I would say that there is. I think that there are Don't you think that there are some ways in which Democrats are like, as a national kind of platform, are going, not with Biden, but with like some of their candidates are just going to? Well, actually, I'm about to say something that I don't actually agree with, so never mind.
I mean, look, there's this fratricidal battle going on in the Democratic caucus now between, the Abigail Spanbergers and AOCs of the world. And I gotta say, I don't think it merits, it's a big coalition. And I don't mean to be like a defender of the hard left, which I don't usually find myself being, but I'm kind of with AOC on this. The coalition is a coalition of the hard left, the AOCs and, of the world, through moderate, reasonable conservatives. And if we're going to have a coalition that big, there has to be an understanding that everybody gets to be themselves in that coalition. So I don't want to tell Charlie Sykes, you have to be pro-choice. And I don't want to tell AOC, you have to be, you have to never say the word socialism, which is what Abigail Spanberger said to her and lots of people like her, and that you should never say the words defund the police. Now, am I a fan of defunding the police? No, I actually think, we have to have some policing in the country. But I don't think in a big coalition that is united by a sense of decent government and a desire to get rid of an incumbent president, I don't think that we should be telling each other what you're not allowed to say, what you're not allowed to believe.
That being said, both Charlie Sykes and people like Charlie Sykes and people like AOC I shouldn't even say people like Charlie Sykes, like the far left and the far right both get turned, especially now in today's media systems, into paradigmatic branding for their to stir up fear among all Republicans everywhere. So AOC is like the fear of the right, and like people like Tom Cotton and Lindsey Graham are the fear of the left. But
wait a minute. There are the Republican Party has had AOCs forever, like Louis Gohmert, like Steve King, right? And to the moderate Republicans who have to run in Democratic districts, we say, and I think rightly, by the way, tough noogies. You got to live with you got to distinguish yourself from the crazies in your party. And if Abigail Spanberger's point is AOC is making it difficult for me to, and by the way, AOC is much less crazy. In fact, she's not crazy. She's just ideological.
Yes.
She's just a left winger. But if, the burden is on the people in the center, just as the burden is on AOC to explain to her constituency why, even though I'm saddled with all these asshole moderates who prevent me from getting done the things I promise, it is still to your benefit to support me. That burden is on AOC. And the burden that's on Abigail Spanberger is she needs to explain to her, her Virginia, very moderate, quite Republican constituency, that it is safe to vote for me despite the radical crazies who I don't really associate with, but yeah, it's a really big tent and I gotta manage that. But trust me, you're not gonna have no police in your neighborhood because I'm in the same party with AOC. And just be big children and accept that that's what it means to be in a big coalition. There's a lot goes on in the Democratic Party that I don't have time for. That's on me.
I'm just going to say briefly to the people in the chat that are getting upset because we're targeting AOC. We're not targeting AOC. We're using her as we are talking, it is like a meta conversation, not about AOC herself, but what she's basically come to represent for the right and how she gets characterized by the right. This is not that we're believing any of these things necessarily or think that this is true, or even that people in her own party think that that it's true what people in her own party say of her.
I'm talking about AOC because she and Abigail Spanberger got into a big public back and forth, and she was one of the principal combatants in that, and that's why I'm using her in AOC. But you could make the same argument for a bunch of other people, and
if it wasn't AOC, it would be somebody else. It would be somebody else that was too far on whatever issue. They would just find someone. I mean, it's beyond. I think that there's I think that to a certain extent, this is politics is normal, but as we've seen over and over and over again, on steroids, like because of social media and because of the way um, everything is being kind of being kind of accentuated these days.
David Botts, the floor is yours.
Well, good afternoon. In my background, I put up a picture of Judge Jackson for yesterday.
Let's. Oh,
Oh,
there
lovely.
he is.
That's so
And
nice. Now
pancakes.
pancakes. So cute.
So I'm trying to think of you and be timely and relevant and everything that we do in lieu of fun. But a very not fun topic is given exponential numbers, we are days away from being in excess of 200,000 new cases per day, and that number is only going to go up for a while.
Yep.
So, given I'll say the failure of the current administration to do anything meaningful about this over the last 8 months, what suggestions might you have for the incoming Biden administration, recognizing that their hands are tied right now for two reasons, not only GSA, but we only have one president at a time. But interested in your thoughts about what can be done prior to January 20th on this matter.
Do you have thoughts, Kate?
Not that are particularly insightful. What do you think, Ben?
So first of all, I am not a healthcare policy executive, and I'm mindful of what I don't know here. But a few things. One is they have this task force that they're putting together, and I think they should be quite aggressive about both contact with the states in advance over the period of the transition, and also about announcing what they're going to do when they get into office. So you cannot do anything during the transition, but one thing you can do is say what you're going to do. And if you're going to ask people if you're going to ask states to do things, which they are, announcing now what some of those things are going to be as you figure it out gives states time. It also it'll rock the current administration back on its heels a little bit, because it'll force them to explain why they're not doing this stuff now. And so I do expect, as they figure out, hey, we're going to ask, the state of Minnesota to do the following 5 things, we're going to, make sure that X is done at the federal level. I think they should be announcing that stuff. Now, I don't know what some of those things are. As I say, this really isn't my policy area. But I do think being very active about saying what's going to happen January 20th or January 21st, which is another way of saying what should have happened September 21st, right? Would be a very healthy thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing those kinds of statements as soon as this task force gets its act together. The second thing is they need a coherent vaccine distribution plan, because they're going to, one way or another, they're going to have vaccine to distribute, but not enough of it in a relatively short period of time. Now, whether that's the Pfizer vaccine or whether it's something else, it's probably going to be both. But they're going to have, they're going to need to distribute up to 300 million doses and persuade a lot of people who don't want to take it to take it. And so that's a complicated logistical endeavor. And so, figuring that out, very important. And then there is the messaging thing. They've got to, the most important thing people can be doing right now is wearing masks, and not enough people are doing it. We need and I think Biden has done a superb job at this, by the way. The more he is out there, he needs to be talking about it in every single speech he gives, every single public appearance. And so those are some thoughts, but as to what a COVID reduction implementation plan for the United States looks like, I'm the wrong person to ask that question.
Yeah. I mean, I wish that I knew. I didn't even know. I had an idea, but I didn't even have a particularly robust understanding of why all this happened to begin with. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's having the right people in the right positions will actually make a difference. But look, when you have 200,000 new cases a day, it's going to take time to bring that number down. This is exactly the situation we were trying to avoid. Christopher, the floor is yours.
All right. Good evening. So there was a quote in a New York Times article today by Usted Herndon about the Stop the Steal protests. And one guy said, quote, "This is contempt of half the country by the other half of the country." And of course, he's talking about contempt of Trump voters. But I would say you could easily flip it on the other side and say that his Trump voters are showing contempt for Biden voters. And this goes back to something that I observed from at least from Clinton, which was the first Democratic president that I was aware of. And there sort of seems to be a sentiment on the far left, sort of the right, that that a Democratic president is never going to be legitimately is never going to be legitimately elected in this country. That they see the country as fundamentally conservative, and that any sort of center, liberal leaning president is not a legitimate president. So I would sort of ask, my question is, expanding on that, what do you see will be Trump's reception as an ex-president? Will he be sort of shunned in sort of like the Nixon model? I can't see him being, invited to any sort of all the living presidents, club. So in light of both this idea that conservatives or these people don't see any president elected as a Democrat as legitimate, will sort of Trump be kind of the president of kind of like a neo-Confederacy, essentially, minus Northern Virginia and Atlanta and the suburbs? I mean, he essentially only campaigned in Confederate states. Will sort of the Confederacy see him as their president and Biden as, quote, hashtag not my president?
What do you think, Kate?
I mean, listen, it's been this split for a while. Is just time? And I mean, to call it the Confederacy, I just don't think is I don't think that I think that there is enough diversity in workforce and the types of economies that are spread across our country that we're never going to have the type of geographical split that you kind of describe as a geography kind of seceding, or there being some type of movement of not my president or whatever. But just as a practical matter, Civil War kind of history matter. But I think that the idea that 50% of the country doesn't want Biden to be their president is the same. Has always been a problem with the way that we elect presidents in a winner takes all system. That's I think that's. I mean, there's plenty of governments that there and in multi-party systems where the majority vote winner gets the top seat, and then whoever is number two gets the next top seat. So whoever and we used to kind of, for a period run this way, like, would become vice president. I don't know. That's not how we do it here. Do I think that it's a long-term problem? I actually think for a two-party system, we wouldn't want that type of outcome, because for like nothing, absolutely nothing would get done. So if we had more wiggle room in terms of parties, I would say that maybe, but I don't know if that's exactly answers what you're asking, but in general, I just kind of, I don't know. Am I kind of rambling here, Ben? I don't know like exactly what to say, except that I agree. But that's just kind of the way that things are done.
So, yeah, I think that, so first of all presidents are considered illegitimate by a certain set of the people who vote against them. And if you just think about how much "not my president" tweeting there was about Trump, though he indisputably won the election, and under the rules of the system, he won it fair and square. People also felt very strongly that, there were, racist conspiracy theories about Barack Obama's birth, right? There were also, there was a long-term effort to delegitimize Bush's first term because of the circumstances of his election. And the truth of the matter, and of course, as Christopher points out, there was a lot of craziness about Clinton as well. My essentially entire adult lifetime, there have been efforts to delegitimize the president. Now, some of them offend me more than others, but I fully expect Joe Biden to get more than his share of that. It is being stoked. It's a real thing. On the other hand, I do think the premise of the question, which is that Trump is going to play some unique role in this. When there was mishigas about Bill Clinton's legitimacy, George Bush played no role in it. When there was craziness about whether George W. Bush was a legitimate president, Al Gore played no role in it, right? John McCain never questioned and, in fact, rejected the questions about Barack Obama. Yes. And so I do think there is a really interesting problem that we're going to experience where Trump is going to personally stoke the whatever meritless anxieties there will be about Biden's presidency's legitimacy. And I do think that is a unique thing. And I also think Christopher is being savvy that this will have much greater resonance. It's not just the old states of the Confederacy, because it's also, Wyoming and Idaho, right? Certain, Montana, right? It's rural America. This stuff will have much greater salience than it will in the suburbs and in the cities. And that reflects a genuine problem that we need to think very hard about. And I don't know what the solution is. By the way, it is not unique to the United States at all. The same thing if you talk to Ann Applebaum about, what the divide in Poland is. It's a rural-urban divide. And the same thing is happening in a lot of European countries. All right, so Genevieve gets the last question, except Genevieve, the floor is yours.
Hello.
Hey.
Sorry, my internet is doing some curious things. But my question's a little more lighthearted. How do both of you push through writer's block, and any general tips on how do you like to approach writing in general?
Such a good question. I'm interested to know your tips. You want me to go first?
You go first, because I have literally given lectures on this subject, and I don't want to monopolize this. So, Kate, go first.
The first thing is I stopped writing, and this is not something that you can do, Genevieve, because you're still in law school. I stopped writing about shit I don't care about anymore, and I don't have something to say. Honestly, that's a huge deal. I get invitations to, I'm lucky enough to get some like invitations to write for things all the time and do symposium and like things like that. And I say no. And that took us a hard thing to learn, because writing is like the currency of and publishing is the currency of like my profession. And so, but deciding that things were just not worth writing. So saying no to things and waiting for the right thing, then like, I would say that generally I have had a breakthrough of like tweeting, of basically like writing small things in tweet like sizes and just being like, and this paragraph is going to kind of say this, and then this paragraph is going to say this, and putting it in the ugliest form possible, but getting it out of my brain. And if I just cannot, it's the difference between not knowing what to say and not knowing how to say it. And if you, so like, my first tip was for the stick to things you know what to say if you can. Maybe Ben can answer if you don't, like if what you should do. But if you don't, then like, and then you kind of just like, you just start putting down words and they're ugly. I literally am like, graph 4, this needs to be a jet. And I just say it like this. I'm like, this needs to be like Ben talking shit about Trump and saying that he's bad because he has orange hair or like whatever, and then like moving on, and like I kind of like, and like then I gather things in and slot them in like bullets underneath it, and then I go back and like once I do that, if I'm really having trouble like coming up with sentence level stuff, then I turn them kind of into sentences and transition them into each other. And sometimes I also like, I will just, as a last thing, just say that I sometimes I do not have a good day and I'm not going to write, and I know it's going to happen and I can feel it in my bones. I've gotten distracted by everything, and I just say, I'm not going to write today. And I like, if I can afford it, I just say like, I'm not going to write today. I'm going to go for a long walk, or I'm going to do all of the little things that I want to do. And tomorrow I will turn back to writing, and I'm not going to be mad at myself for it. And giving myself that kind of permission, that took a long time, instead of becoming consumed by guilt and kind of like the cycle of that in my head. But yeah, Ben?
I'm going to give you the 5-minute version of a 2-hour lecture that I give to my writing about law class, and that I often give to the interns at Brookings about writing. This is a very condensed version of it. It's actually these are the chapter headings, but I think I can get it down to 5 minutes. I'm going to tell you 2 stories. The first is when I was very young, 26 or 27, I left my job at Legal Times to go write editorials for the Washington Post, and I was completely terrified. And my friend David Jackson, who was then as now a investigative reporter at the Chicago Tribune, took me out for a beer to coach me a little bit. And he said, okay, what are you worried about? And I said, what I'm really worried about is daily writing deadlines. I've never done that before. Because Legal Times was a weekly, and as Ann Kay can tell you, that's a very different schedule. You have, if you fuck up on Tuesday, you write it up on Wednesday, right? But like the idea of getting up in the morning, having no idea what you're going to say, and then having an editorial in the Washington Post that evening that has to be done at a particular time, that was a genuinely terrifying idea. And David puts down his beer and he sighs as though the weight of the world was on his shoulders for having to answer such silly concerns from people like me. And he said, "Oh, Ben, there is no muse. This is not art. Your legacy is not at stake. Nobody is going to remember your editorial 3 days after it happens. The public is entitled to the contents of your head. Our work is a commodity. So your job is to do the research that other people don't have time to do. So you spend the day doing that work, and at the end of the day, you vomit it up because the public is entitled to the contents of your head. And then the next day, you do it again." And that was the most liberating advice I have ever gotten about writing. It's just not that big a fucking deal.
That's
if you
great
need to
piece of
clean the
advice.
toilet, you go and you wash out the toilet. You don't say, I have toilet cleaning block, right? Like, so let me give you another example. So this is the other, right? Like, nobody says that.
I mean, I do say
I
that,
was
so
gonna,
that John does
I was
it,
gonna
so
make dinner tonight, but I had cooking block. Nobody says that. So
I
recently
do say that.
we had a flood in our basement, and we had to have the whole basement gutted and redone. And this amazing guy, I do carpentry, so I'm always interested in, people who do really good carpentry. And the carpenter was incredible. I mean, he just did, like, I learned a lot just by kind of watching what he could do. And he never walked in and said, I have carpenter's block. I have woodworking block today. I'm just not going to get it done. And the painter did not come in, he's like this incredible artisan. He's not painting, the fucking Sistine Chapel, but there's no mistakes, right? And he doesn't walk in and say, oh, I have painter's block today. And somehow we have convinced ourselves that when we do writing, we are like Michelangelo. Our legacy is at stake. Instead of like the guy who came to paint my basement. It's a craft. We're really good at it. I am a really, really good writer, but I'm a craftsman. I'm not fucking Shakespeare. Like, there's no part of my no one's gonna say, oh, well, Wittes hit a really dark spot in his prose, And so it's exactly what David Jackson said. You just walk in, it's a job, and you do it. And the more you can think of it that way, the more you can every day remind yourself that you're the craftsman and you're painting Wittis's basement, you're not painting the Sistine Chapel, all of a sudden the writer's block goes away. Yeah. That is my advice. The public is entitled to the contents of your head, so you vomit it up, and then the next day you do it again.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much. That was
5
very, very
minutes.
helpful.
Also, email me if you really are stuck, but we can talk later.
With that, we are going to wrap up for today. Kate, who's our mystery guest for tomorrow?
Your mystery guest.
No, it's your mystery guest.
Oh. Really?
Last week was me.
I'm looking at the calendar. You're right. I wrote it to myself. It says Kate mystery guest. Damn it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I'm
I guess
it's
going to be a murder hornet.
I'm going to visit Cisco tomorrow, so maybe it'll be Cisco. Maybe it'll be horse.
That will be, and whoever it turns out to be, 22 hours and 52 minutes from now. And until then, Kate, we don't have fun anymore, but we have murder hornets, placemats.
Murder hornet sweatshirts.
Placemats from, I forgot the name of the company, but they're awesome. And we have... condensed monologues that we've never done in 5 minutes before. We will see you tomorrow.